wanted to chat a little bit, if we could, about the adaptation to spirit in human existence of humankind. This adaptation has two conceivable modalities. One is that it is possible for a person to sort of get into a high state and to be in that high state quite divine. To take a very humble but easily comprehensible example, a meeting can occur between numerous people who hold hands and chant Om and so forth, or otherwise have a splendid time and an uplifting time. And then there is a great surge of benign compassion and love that will arise in this company. And it will be manifest perhaps through many or all persons in the group at that time, all of whom have steeped in this dye and who have thus been vibrationally elevated and become entirely disposed, I should say, to act in a manner which is sublime and wondrously godly. Their higher nature apparently has come to the fore.
Yes.
And at such a time, it would be virtually inconceivable in their minds to hurt anyone, to feel separate from anyone, to say an unkind word, or to be imploded, contracted, moody, petulant, reactive, or otherwise obtuse and difficult.
Yeah.
At such a time, the very idea of such a thing would not enter their minds, and they would not be likely to behave in such a manner. This is a rapturous upliftment and a true bliss and a genuine, I should say, manifestation of that person's divine nature as facilitated by this temporal upliftment. But of course, in the spirit of the concept Sunday Christianity, that person, once having left that meeting and going home, could return to the habit and perhaps kick the dog and abuse their mate. Right? Meaning, apparently, the magic potion had worn off and they had returned to their ordinary mode of being, which is to say, an identification with their egoic modes of thought and behavior. At such times, it might be relatively inconceivable to them to behave at home in the manner they were behaving in that rapture here, only not too long ago. This is one iteration of the adaptation of a human being to their own divine nature. Now for the second. In the second, we could see quite possibly something of an opposite scenario and more profound and confusing and significant, I say, which is that a person in a low state of consciousness now could, by reason of commitment and will, could act in a high way from that lowered state of consciousness. Which is to say, just because you have a toothache, just because you're in a bad mood, just because you are in a lowered state, just because your vibrancy and vitality happens at that present moment to be low, does not mean that you cannot act in a true alignment with that which is divine in both thought and deed, and heart and feeling. You see? One could say, well, this would make fairly quick work of your low state, which is probably a reasonable supposition. But nonetheless, okay, there is really no question but that under certain conditions of mortal incarnation, toxicities, the thickness of the flesh and of the lower mind, and so forth, there could be somewhat of a hill that a person would climb, okay, before such time as the physical mechanism and the mind, okay, could really effectively ascend in vibrancy. But the point is, of the two experiences, the one in which this temporary upliftment had facilitated a natural adaptation to the higher self and its ways, and the other in which, through the demonstration and exercise of intention and will, okay, a person acted beyond, let's say, their vibrancy station in such a way as to, again, be quite consistent, entirely consistent in some heart sense with that which is divine. Okay? Of the two, the second is significant. Why? Okay? Because the first is inevitable.
Right.
It is not, as the person truly felt at that time, anything except natural, okay, for a being once elevated to act in a manner which is consistent with their higher nature. And as they said, it would be inconceivable for them to do otherwise at such a time, almost. You see, now there are certain arguments that can be made of willful default and so forth and rebellion from a high state. But barring that particular exception, which deserves no particular energy right now, okay, it is true to say that from a high state, from divinity, divinity acts as divinity is. But humanity, betwixt and between, as it were, and tending to opacity and even to immorality by nature of egoic subservience or ego identification, right, is the only moving piece on the chessboard. In this sense. It is the moving part. It is that which opens and closes doors. It is that which realizes itself or does not as a matter of willful intention, of commandeering the body and the mind in such a way as to represent a commitment which is bankable on account of the fact that it can be unwavering.
Yes.
You see?
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, when you're in a high state, and you do that which is natural to you in such a state, right? Of course you do good, you say good, you realize goodness, you see good. All these things are so natural, you see? When you, however, wobble, let's say, right? If at the time when you go down, your commitment also alters.
Yeah.
It is not to the good now. Now it is satanic, or I should say, egoic. Huh? And you have that feeling at such a time, because we've all wobbled, you see, that your commitments themselves are unstable.
Yeah.
That you are essentially subject to your state. Even your morality is subject to it.
Yes.
The way that you act, the way that you think, the commitments you make, the commitments you keep. All, you see, variable, inconstant, unreliable. And I dare say, frighteningly so at such a time. Frightening to oneself, frightening to others, destabilizing, you see. There is no, you see, terra firma.
Right.
In a wobbling morality, in a wobbling commitment, you see. So therefore, if you were a thoroughgoing bodhisattva, or even a peculiar, that is to say, a person who tended to spiritual experience, and who had an ascending bent of character, of nervous system, right? And you were presented with this option, that you could at this time beam up. You could at this time, okay, become, okay, or say, move to, suddenly, a high position, similar to the position in the Great Meeting, where there was nothing but joy and light, right? And that you had no obligation to return from such an idyllic, beatific state and way of being, right? Would you take it? You see. And again, should you? I say not. I say not. And here's why. Because that human birth, that heart, okay, is true when it expresses itself reliably.
Yes.
And it is odd, you know, to do what the wealthy do in London, who are Arabs, and who buy mansions like we would buy candy, and bring in the family, along with the goats, you see, on the beautiful rugs and the statuary and all, right? Allow the goats and all to urinate and defecate all over the expensive carpets, right? Essentially destroy the mansion, right? And then, seeing that the mansion is in fact a mess, call up their real estate agent and buy another one and move and leave behind this devastation behind. There are people of sensitivity and of moral knowing who consider that behavior substandard. And it is an incompletion on the part of man, okay, not, you see, to achieve a consistency within the present mansion. And to be able to then, you see, move on. Behind is a clean house, a rightly ordered existence. From a low station, pumping iron, as it were, against, at that time, significant propensities of ego, the temptations of ego, the imperfections, proclivities, reactions, who do this, you see, are becoming something. Right. Reliable. For the first time. One time. For real, you see. So therefore, in the new mansion, they don't have to worry about the old mansion. They don't have to feel that the ego would raise its head, you see, incontrovertibly, somehow spontaneously, in the high state, and suddenly represent to them a challenge, temptation, or something, which they would accept and so forth, bring themselves to ruin forthwith, you see, hardly any warning to it. This inconstancy, this instability, the one that was, you see, never, say, relieved, solved, mastered, undone. In these lower states. You see? Is this cave number 924? Are you Yogi Shikl Blickleblatt? I am. Notice to pay alimony. Notice to abate nuisance. Notice to come back and to appear in a court. Of the incompleted karma, of the past, of unrighteousness, you see. So this is why I say, if someone comes to you and they hand you this, you see, free ticket, this fantastic, you see, opportunity, take it, lie, and tell them that you will go there forthwith and never return. Go there. Feel the incompletion of the past mansion. And then, in your beautiful heaven bed, right, arrange your pillows and clothing in such a way as to look like someone is still sleeping there when the guard comes to check and head count. Right? Climb out heaven's window, down, down, down. And go back and do good. And be good.
Yes.
You see.
Yes.
In the flames, in the mud. You see. As a sub-ruler. Right? In the kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
You see?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that, you see, is eternal.
Right.
Mm.
You see. They cannot, you see, you will not take that away from you.
Right.
Because it is yours. Because you earned that. You did that. You see.
Choice.
You did it out of deliberate, you see, conscious volition. You see. It was not a great meeting. It was not a free ticket to ride. You see. It was a voluntary, a non-volatile choice you made in your commitment to that which is right from all states. It doesn't matter to you. Whether you're fucked up or not, whether you're half blind, 3/4 drunk, or all drunk. Because you are what you have committed to, you see.
Yeah.
You have no doubt in that, in your own word, in your own resolve, in your own being, in the heart of you. What I shall be, I shall be. You see? This is not to attempt people to the idea of absolute sovereignty and prodigality in the negative senses of what this all means, this resolving business, this is terrible. But at the same time, okay, as a matter of honoring the actual individuality that we are, as individuals, are, you see, and to say, there are, in fact, choices to be made. Not as a prodigal, in that sense, but see, as a responsible, I should say, citizen.
Yeah.
Who knows one's place in the universe by virtue of having committed to what that will be.
Right.
Yes.
You see? You see? And then in this you are, you see, secure. And whether you go up, or whether you go down. You see? You are in that invincible.
Yeah.
You see? Because of your commitment to be so. Because of your willingness to see that your will can comfortably align itself against all the forces and propensities of evil within and without. And I dare say, basically within.
Yeah.
And all within. Huh?
Yes.
Within all. Huh? You see? You can align yourself in confidence against that because of your commitment. It no longer matters to you what side of bed you particularly happen to have gotten out on. You see? In that commitment. You see? You are no longer really a pawn in the game of circumstance, pawn in the game of whimsy, pawn in the game of ego mind, lower propensities of the flesh, can't kick, the whole business. Why? Because of your commitment. You see? This is simple. And this is the eternal Dharma, Sanatana Dharma.
Yes.
Yes.
That the human being has the ability and the obligation to pull itself up from its own bootstraps by virtue of the existence of its sovereign nature. Inviolable, inconvertible as that is, that sovereignty, that beingness, that entityness, that free will. Right? It must, you see, bring itself around to rightness from within, a commitment of heart to heart. You see, it must. You see, that is the opportunity of existing. To, as a matter of free will, do such a thing. And the rest, as for the rest, what is the rest? Madness. Schizophrenia. You see, non-commitment. You see, a wobbling and a wavering on, with respect to all that is important, all that matters. You see, a sadder burden one could not ever bear than that. Because it is a burden of one's own handiwork, one's own inconstancy. Self-made, self-inflicted, you see. So then, only the you that gets you into that place of inconstancy and wobbling can get you out of it, can will you out, can commit you out, right? So that when that rubber stamp comes, you see, and this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. It will be because that beloved Son or daughter of God, right, made this commitment. You see, did this thing, felt this way, knew this much, walked this walk in accordance with all that was known. You see. And then, so therefore, reliable. And therefore, you see, trustworthy, known, you see, knowable, as it were, You see? A good friend. And to all. By this means. Even oneself. As such. As an individual entity. Accountable to that, recognizable by that, as that. Why not? Why indeed? Have you heard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yes.
Good job.
Hmm.
It just occurred to me, one more thought. It just occurred to me how profoundly true it is that this exertion of will in a low state and so forth, as a will creature, a sovereign being, over against these tendencies, these propensities of ego, of the flesh, a reaction and so forth, is really, in truth, a freedom bid.
Yes.
It is an expression of freedom itself,
Yes.
Yeah.
alive
Yes.
and kicking.
Yeah.
And so, they had this song, and I'd like you all to join in with me, if you support me in a chorus.
Okay.
And it goes like this. A Negro spiritual song. Oh, freedom. That's your part.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Over me. And before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Take this hammer, get to the captain. Take this hammer, get to the captain. Take this hammer, get to the captain. Tell him I'm flying, Lord. Tell him I'm gone. If he asks you, was I running? If he asks you, was I running? If he asks you, was I running? Tell him I was flying, Lord. Tell him I was flying. There you are.